All right, question one. What do I think it means to be old? Um, Quite honestly, I think that's just kind of your perspective on it. Um, I'm 40. Sometimes I feel old. A couple weeks ago, I bent over to pick up one of my cats, and I bent just wrong, twisted my neck, and I couldn't move it for a couple of days. I felt very old. I have a 10-year-old son. I don't know where 10 years went. That makes me feel old. But I also have patients of mine that are 40, in their early 40s, and I guess depending on the choices they've made in their life, things beyond their control, genetics, they look like they're in their 60s, and they look old. So, and I think part of it is how you kind of process it. Do you feel old? Do you act your age? I get told a lot that I still act like a 5-year-old. Quite honestly, I take that as a compliment. I don't ever really want to grow up. So I always want to be that kid, which is actually why I'm doing these videos. I love doing these. This is a lot better than writing papers for me. I have fun. I enjoy doing these. Okay, second part to question one. What does it mean to be disabled? I also think this is a state of mind. I've seen people that truly are disabled and, beyond their control or circumstances. They're confined to a wheelchair, they're blind, they're deaf, whether genetically or, some accident that's happened in their life. But also, it depends on how you handle the situation. Some of those people don't ever let it get them down. I had an uncle, he was a quadriplegic with limited motion. And he actually he had had an accident that caused him to be disabled when he was rather young. He took that opportunity with what had happened to him, and he actually opened up his own handicap business, putting wheelchair lifts and servicing mobile scooters and wheelchairs for other disabled people, and it was a very successful business. He's actually passed on, but he actually sold it to my brother-in-law, who still runs it very successfully. Into part one, your understanding of aging and disability compared to different generations. I think you kind of have, I know the OK Boomer thing right now is kind of trending. But I do think different generations have different ways of looking at aging. I think a lot of people in that generation, expect you to move out at 18, have your first house, be married all in your mid-20s, and a lot of that doesn't happen anymore. I'm kind of old school. I did move out when I was 18. I graduated high school. 2 weeks later, I moved out. And moved from California to Wyoming to kind of get my own life started. But I don't think that opportunity to a lot of the younger generation is there anymore. With the way student loan debt is, how expensive just the cost of living is in most areas, the lack of opportunity if you don't have a college degree. There's a lot of these things that generationally kind of have to be put off into your 30s and sometimes 40s. We have a couple of friends that didn't have their first kids until they were in their 40s. So, and that's going to pose challenges as they age with children that are still significantly young compared to a lot of the younger generation where they had their kids in their 20s. And, by the time they hit 50, 60, they had someone who, if anything happened to them, healthcare wise, could help look after them. You're going to be having parents that are in their 60s and still have teenagers running around the house. And, as much as a teenager thinks they're independent, they are still going to need a parent there. All right, second part to question two, as far as disability generationally. I grew up with a grandfather who was a POW in the Korean War. And, to hear him talk, there was no such thing as PTSD, like a lot of our younger veterans have. I mean, he would tell stories of the way they dealt with it was a bottle of whiskey, and you didn't talk about it. I was fortunate enough that he kind of told me some of the stories of what he went through, but there's a lot of family members that the way he coped, he just did not talk. And I think that's pretty common among the older generations. I don't think they understand a lot of these mental health disabilities that some of the younger generations have. I think they, just suck it up, buttercup. And I think we have a better understanding nowadays of how crippling mental disability can be. And I'm hoping that changes over time. It needs to change faster than what it is and be more accepting. But yeah, generationally, younger generations I think are a little bit more accepting of, these mental disabilities, helping each other out. The older generations, suck it up. I guess this is still question 2, part 3, as far as how it relates to other cultures. Sorry, my squeaky chair. I think America is kind of different in the fact that we kind of generationally, culturally have separate households. Whereas in other parts of the world, you have grandparents still living at home. You have the newlyweds coming back and starting a family with this multi-generational family helping everyone out. There's a much better support system, I think, for that. And I think even with the aging, the grandparents at home, the younger generations are there to help them with anything they need. If anyone is disabled in the family, you still have that great support system of everybody being kind of under the same roof. All right, question 3, part 1. This is something I think as we in our family get older, we're starting to kind of question who's going to be the caretakers for our family members. And I think it's going to have to be a team effort. My sister and me will probably be in charge of taking care of my mother. My father lives out of state. I don't know what will happen when he gets to the point where he needs help. He is in a situation where he has lots of nieces and nephews and his brothers and sisters around, so he does have a support system. As far as my wife, her family lives here up in Prescott. So as things get closer to where they're going to need help, maybe they'll have to move closer to us, or we may have to make a move up there. And I think this is something a lot of families at my age are kind of starting to grapple with. Things could be just fine one day and somebody has an aneurysm, a crippling fall, or a stroke, and things change overnight. But I think in order for you not to get stressed out, it's going to have to be a team effort. I'm a radiology tech. I do see family members that are taking care of, their parents or grandparents. And you can see the ones that have support of everyone, and then the ones that are stuck kind of doing everything by themselves and they are burned out. So it needs to be a team effort. As far as the caregiver having to be a member, I don't think that's necessarily set in stone. If your best friend and they've been your friend forever, to me that's family. I think that's a pretty fluid. If you have that, relationship with someone and you regard them as family, they regard you as family, and they're willing to step up to the plate and help either you or one of your family members out. As far as I'm concerned, that's family. So I don't think it has to be by blood. Family is what you make it. So some people don't have the opportunity to really have a bloodline family around them, and they've supplanted it with all their friends. So if that's what works for them, great. So there's a lot of good people out there that will step up. Part 2, question 1. One way that disability has affected me is going back to my uncle, who was the quadriplegic. and running this successful business. As a teenager, it was kind of a rite of passage that all the nieces and nephews got to do their time working down at the shop. And it gave you an opportunity to see, A, what my uncle could still do. Yes, he was limited body, but he was as sharp as a tack. He could retain information like nothing. I mean, he would read the service manuals on how to install these wheelchair lifts and, the repairs needed for the wheelchairs and the scooters. And if you got stuck, he could, walk you through it just, from remembering what he had read. And also seeing the patrons that came through there. I think I want to say I was 16 when I worked down there. Still an impressionable age to, what people go through. And they're still contributing members. They would do conversions on the vans to allow people still to drive, to have their independence. And that was very important to them. I mean, more than once, you would see people break down crying because you had fixed their wheelchair or their scooter. Because, to them, that is their legs. That's how they get around, and you've given back their independence. And that can be very powerful. And it also makes you humble that, you're still walking around your own two legs, and you're not dependent on, something that can break down. Not that your own body can't break down, but you're at the whims of a machine. The first statistic is the graying of America. It's actually on the census.gov website. And it's just explaining how by the year 2035, there's going to be more aging adults than there is going to be children replacing them. And it's stressing that there's going to be a greater need for healthcare workers, there's going to be a greater need for in-home caregiving and more assisted living facilities. The reason I selected this one is because I am in healthcare, and we are starting to see that. And also, we're also facing smaller workforces as things become automated. Computer and digital starts to take over more. You don't need as many people doing the same job, which hopefully starts to equal some things out. We're moving from a manufacturing type country to more of a consumer based. And you're not going to need as many people installing a widget on a widget, but you're going to need somebody who can diagnose the computer that does that. So you might have, 5 or 6 people working on an assembly line, and now you only need 1 or 2 just to kind of oversee production. But as far as the healthcare, it's just going to get a bigger and bigger need for it as this patient population ages out. Next statistic that I'm going to look at is aging in place. And this is on the AARP.org site. There's a greater number of 50 plus individuals that are looking at staying at home rather than going to skilled nursing facilities or assisted living facilities. They want to stay in their own house, which is understandable. It's their home to them. It's where they're most comfortable. It's where their memories are. It's where they've raised their kids. And this is going to open up, I think, some opportunities. You're going to need more in-home nursing. You're going to need more delivery services as far as groceries, medications. You're going to have the need for contractors. How do these houses need to be modified so they can accept wheelchairs, mobile scooters? If it's a 2-story house, do they need to have one of those, I don't know what they're called, the riding elevators up the side of the stairs? So I think it's an opportunity for some. I think there will be a point where some of these patients will have to probably be transferred over to a skilled nursing home because their needs are going to be greater than what can be provided at home, especially if they need to have 24/7 monitoring, depending on their health condition. But I am actually excited for this. This is how I would like to age. I'd like to stay in place. We're not in our forever home right now, but we get to that point. I would like to be our forever home and stay there as long as we can. So I totally understand why they want to stay in place. The other statistic I'm looking at is actually a combination of aging and disability. One of the statistics in there is just over 1 in 4 of today's 20-year-olds will become disabled before they retire. So, I mean, let's look around at your friends. And if you got 8 friends, 2 of them are going to be disabled. Now, to me, I don't like to think of my friends becoming disabled. But I think it's something we need to take into consideration as all of us start to age and how we're going to take care of ourselves. Statistic is also looking at the rise in Alzheimer's disease among the older generations. So, and I think that's something we need to take into account too, that disabilities are not going to be just physically. It's also going to be a lot of mental disability that's going to start affecting these older generations. I mean, they might be of sound body, but if the mind's not there, they're still going to need care and support in order for them to age gracefully, I guess you could say. So what have I learned from this class so far? That I think as society that we can all do a better job of addressing aging and disability, taking better care of each other, whether they're family or not. Just because you can't do everything doesn't mean you can't do anything. And I think a lot of aging and disabled people still have a lot to offer out there. And we need to do a better job of recognizing that.